A federal judge has cited the fictional character Frank Underwood of the Netflix series House of Cards in a ruling striking down a somewhat controversial Ohio law that banned false statements in political advertisements. So we're going to just describe this law to you. Eventually, after we give our opinion, I want to tell you about the road that this has taken to eventually getting to this judge who knocked it down, because it is amazing. But first of all, the 19-year-old Ohio law had banned falsehoods in campaigns and empowered the Ohio Elections Commission to determine whether disputed statements were true or false. This was a nonpartisan organization. But critics said the law prevented them from freely criticizing political candidates because they feared prosecution under Ohio's law against false claims. Now, in his ruling, Timothy S. Black, who is the federal judge, said, "What then is the alternative? The United States Supreme Court has clearly signaled the answer. For starters, the Supreme Court held flatly in 2012 that the remedy for speech that is false is speech that is true. This is the ordinary course in a free society. The response to the unreasoned is the rational, to the uninformed, the enlightened, to the straight-out lie, the simple truth." United States v. Alvarez. The more modern recitation of this long-standing and fundamental principle of American law was recently articulated by Frank Underwood in House of Cards. There's no better way to overpower a trickle of doubt than with a flood of naked truth.
That's an ironic source for that quote, given that in the show he is the most deceptive person you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
That's right. Right. So, but I like that he's having fun with it, and he threw Frank Underwood there.
Yeah, he backed it up first with real stuff.
Yeah,
But the real stuff is absurd, though, because it presumes that that everybody reads PolitiFact every day. So I mean that yes, it doesn't. The fact that you can take untruth and disprove it, and that is part of our free speech, that exists. That doesn't mean you are to also enable untruths to be.
Yeah, I know, but he makes a fair point. Like, so what do you do? Like, you have a government committee that decides whether something's true or not. I don't love that. I'm not against it.
But there has to be in the way the truth in advertising works. I don't know what mechanisms they have, but
remember, it's a 19-year-old
No, they're
law.
trying
It's
to
not some
seduce
brand
you
new
into
thing.
buying things, but they've also, the FCC has come down on them over the years to a point where they can't say things that they were
but they just have to be clever in the manner in which they deceive.
Yes, you're right. I mean, you could look at it skeptically, but it's a vast difference from
I
where
don't
it
see
used
any
to be.
way other than to how to look at skeptically. Yeah, maybe. I mean, the marketing from companies to sell you products is now more deceitful than it has ever been because they're just incredibly clever about it.
Well, it's far more subtle than it ever was, too.
Yeah, I mean,
So it's interesting because, I mean, I certainly understand what Michael's saying, and I think this is a really tough question because, you would run into libel and slander issues, but you could then say, all right, Bob McBobson, who's running for Congress, is a child molester and take up 10 billboards in town. Don't vote for the child molester, Bob McBobson, right? And this case says, oh, no, you're perfectly free to do that,
It's up to
right?
Bob
he
now
can
to
put
say,
a-
no, I'm not.
Right,
Yeah.
and so that's problematic. But having said that, I'm with Ben in the end, and it's close. It's because I think that somebody coming in there and saying, well, no, that's not technically true, so you're going to have to reframe it in a different way, and I just don't see our current government would have the balls to do that, to step in, and if they did, it would certainly be against Democrats and not against Republicans. Republicans would scream from the rooftops.
It's not an easy. There's not an easy fix, but you can't have a ton of Bob McBobsons out there because then or you will have a ton of Bob McBobsons out there, and that's what happens.
Of course, it's a little different. If you said Bob McBobson is a child molester, Bob McBobson would have also a significant
libel, slander issues, and he could sue you, and
that he could win, even if he's a public figure. You can't quite
Right.
say that.
Yeah, but if you say he's against the Constitution, well, okay, let's try to figure out if that's a lie or not, right? So there are some things that are easy to prove. He voted with Obama 90% of the time. No, he voted with Obama 14% of the time, right? You can prove that, right? But even then, he's going to say, well, in these things, there were
procedural votes
and all that stuff. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, it's like what the Democrats did with McCain. He voted to raise taxes 412 times, right?
Right.
Well, there was a cigarette tax that was inside of a defense spending bill that he voted for, so that means he voted to raise taxes. So there is that kind of, that gray area. It's still true, but I mean, yes, it's still true.
It's
so
still
you
true,
could say
it's
it,
still
but
true,
it's not.
but it's incredibly deceitful.
It's deceitful. It skirts what they're.
So then, would you
ban
ban that or not ban that?
No, I wouldn't ban that. I mean, because that is fact.
It's tough. It's tough.
on the McBobson thing, Ben makes a good point, because yes, you could sue for slander, but there are other examples that are not as clear cut as that one.
Right.
And so I just think it's not. I understand where he's coming from. I totally disagree with it.
Okay, now even though I agreed with Ben, I'm going to back up Michael's point more. Now, the two decisions that have been made lately, let's say three if you include Citizens United and McCutcheon, says now you can spend unlimited money in politics and you could lie in unlimited ways. So with this case, the Alvarez case, right? And now backed up in this particular Ohio situation. So when you put those two things together, actually the truth cannot overwhelm the lies.
Yeah.
If you spend enough money on the lies, it will definitely overwhelm the truth. To me, the answer isn't trying to figure out what's true or not true. It's the answer is to not allow unlimited spending in politics.
Giving all the money to the
Right.
liars.
Yeah.
I mean, they're getting the liars.
And they're motivated by specific financial incentives. Deregulation saves them billions of dollars and allows them to pollute into the air, as an example. Lower taxes saves them tens of billions of dollars. They're motivated and now have the ability to go nuclear on their lies.
Well, let's talk briefly about specific liars, the liars who created the conflict that led to the suit that eventually got to Timothy S. Black to then make this ruling based on. Just to fast catch you up, the Susan B. Anthony list were planning to buy a billboard back in 2010 that was going to attack then U.S. Representative Steve Dryhouse for supporting taxpayer-funded abortions. Now, why are they saying that he supported that? Because he voted in favor of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Now, he is actually a Democrat, but an anti-abortion Democrat, and so he was going to challenge to have it taken down under the law at that point. They then said, okay, we're not going to be able to have the billboard, so we're going to challenge the actual law, since they know they can't actually back up the case that they were trying to make that he supported the taxpayer-funded abortions. So now that law is now gone, and the Susan B. Anthony list is once again planning to use the same billboard, but this time to attack U.S. Representative Marcy Kaptur, who also opposes abortion. In response to this law being struck down, a representative for that group said, "Today's decision allows us to freely communicate the truth with voters, that elected representatives who voted for the Affordable Care Act voted for taxpayer-funded abortion. They had the chance to tell the truth. If it was the truth, they could have defended it to the organization in Ohio that would determine the veracity of their statement on the billboard. They knew that they could not do that. They knew that the Patient Affordable Care Act does not allow for taxpayer-funded abortions. That's why they had to challenge it, and now they're back sticking to their guns, and they're going to use it to try to knock out another politician. This is exactly what a law of this sort is supposed to stop."
So one last piece of that that's really interesting to add to what John is saying is that they went to court and saying, we know we're liars, right? We know that Obamacare does not have taxpayer-funded abortions. We'd like the legal ability to say this lie, right? So then they turn around and say, oh, we're not lying, except you said something else in court.
Yeah.
You said, I'd like the legal ability to lie.